Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Diyan nyo din makakasama ang DZJV 1458 Radyo Calabarzon. Like, follow, and subscribe sa aming mga social media accounts at DZJV 1458 sa Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at YouTube. Sakuna, kalamidad, at mga di inaasahang pangyayari. Kanino ka sisigaw ng tulong? Gising na kaibigan, kaakibat ng pag-iingat ay kahandaan. Makibahagi para di masawi. Makinig sa Kaakibat kasama sina Daniel Castro at Rose Ann Sibag. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 1:00 ng hapon sa programang Kaakibat. Dito lang sa DZJV 1458 Radyo Calabarzon. Para makilala ang iyong negosyo, halina't magpaanunsyo sa radyo sa DZJV 1458 Radyo Calabarzon. Sa abot kayang halaga, ang budget mo ay hindi masisira. Maririnig ka pa sa Quezon, Cavite, Rizal, Batangas at Laguna kasama pa ang Metro Manila. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon at para maka-avail ng mga swak na advertisement package, tumawag sa 545-2153 o mag-text sa 0932-228-3828. Kilalanin ang mga alagad ng batas na handang protektahan at gabayan ang sambayanan, tagapamahala ng seguridad at matatakbuhan sa oras ng pangangailangan kasama ang mga magigiting na kapulisan sa programang Kaayusan, Kaligtasan at Kapayapaan sa DZJV 1458 Radyo Calabarzon. Kaakibat ng Diyos para sa bayan. Diskarte. Programang pambalitaan ng DZJV 1458. Didiskartehan at tatalakay ang mga napapanahong issue sa loob at labas ng Calabarzon. Diskarte. Mga balita at impormasyon ihahatid sa inyo ni Daniel Castro. Diskarte. Lunes, Martes, Huwebes at Biyernes, 3:00 hanggang 4:00 ng hapon. Dito lang sa DZJV 1458 Radyo Calabarzon. Naghahatid ng napapanahong impormasyon at inspirasyon para sa buong Calabarzon. Tagasulong ng mga proyektong pangkaunlaran para sa katagumpayan ng bawat mamamayan. Himpilang naglilingkod sa Diyos at sa bayan. DZJV 1458 Radyo Calabarzon.
Teaching the Bible is a listener and viewer supported program. In order to help keep it on the air, please go to my website, teachingthebible.net. Hi everyone, welcome back to Teaching the Bible. I'm your host, Michael Koch. Teaching the Bible is a weekly radio and television program that details and explains the major events that take place in the Bible as I move forward through the Bible each episode. Now today we're going to finish off the book of Daniel. Daniel is the last of the major prophets in the Bible. And the reason why they're called major prophets is just because the books about them are longer. There's more things that happen in them versus the minor prophets where the books are shorter. That's the only difference. And Daniel, to catch up to speed, there was 2 Babylonian exiles, a first one and a second one, but where King Nebuchadnezzar came into the kingdom of Judah, conquered it, and took people away in an exile. The second one was an absolutely horrible, just devastating exile where the city was burned down, the walls were burned down, so many people were killed, people died by the sword, famine, pestilence, many were dragged away in an exile. It was utterly devastating. Now the first exile that happened earlier was the same thing. They were conquered and taken away, but it served 2 purposes. The first one was to discipline the people of Judah because they weren't listening to God, despite God's several warnings through the prophets to stop following false gods and return to following him. And they wouldn't do it. So God warned them that an exile would happen. The first one happened. But a second reason for the first exile is God revealed in the Bible to the people of Judah that he allowed the first exile also to happen, besides disciplining the people, was to keep them safe in Babylon, kind of tucked away safely on a shelf there in Babylon, so that when the second horrible exile happened that just wiped so many people out, that there would be people of Judah to be able to return to the kingdom of Judah. And so he said, I'm basically putting you here to keep you safe. So when the second one's over, I could bring you back to repopulate Judah, whose capital is Jerusalem. And Daniel was one of the several people that were taken there. And the story of Daniel the main point of Daniel is that God used Daniel and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. God did miracles through them in order to show and convince two pagan kings and their empires, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon and King Darius of the Medo-Persian Empire, that our God is the one true God, and he needs to be followed as the one true God. And God did that through Daniel and his friends. Now we're picking up with the next episode. Last time we heard about Daniel not just interpreting King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, but also telling him what his secret dream was, and which is a miracle, because nobody knows what a dream a person has unless that person tells them. But God told Daniel. And now we're picking up with Daniel's three friends, and the story in the Bible is Daniel's friends in the fiery furnace. Now one day King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, made a golden statue 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. King Nebuchadnezzar commanded all the people of Babylon that they were to fall on their knees and worship the statue whenever any kind of music was played. It was reported to the king that Daniel's three friends would not bow down and worship the golden statue when music was played. Now, it's not in the Bible, but from what I understand from a very well-respected Bible teacher that I follow on television, actually, it was believed that Daniel was out of the country at this time. Because you might ask, well, these three friends didn't bow down to the statue. What about Daniel? And I'm going to guess at why God allowed this to happen. I'm just guessing on my own. Daniel already did a great miracle in front of King Nebuchadnezzar to show that our God was the one true God. If another miracle came from Daniel, it's easy for the people and the King Nebuchadnezzar to assume Daniel is the one with the power, and Daniel is the one that's special. He's not. God is. Okay, he's just an instrument of God. And so I think God allowed now the second event to happen without Daniel there so that people realize, yeah, it's not so much these people are special, but it's their God that they follow that are special. So the name of Daniel's three friends were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. King Nebuchadnezzar became extremely angry because they would not bow down to the statue as he ordered when music was played. He brought Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to his palace. He told them that if they did not bow down and worship the golden statue whenever the king played music or blew a horn, they would be thrown into a fiery furnace. The three men said to the king, "Our God is able to deliver us from your fiery furnace. But even if he does not, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden statue that you set up." They held fast to, no matter what you do to us, we're only going to worship our God of Israel or Judah. That's in Daniel chapter 3, verse 16 to 18. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar went into an angry rage when they said this. He demanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. He ordered soldiers to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to throw them into the burning fiery furnace. When the soldiers tied the 3 men up and threw them into the furnace, the fire was so hot that it killed the soldiers that threw them into the fire. As King Nebuchadnezzar looked on, he jumped up in astonishment. He said to his followers, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They said, "Yes, King, we did." Nebuchadnezzar said, "But I see 4 men, untied and walking around in the middle of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th one is like the Son of God." Could Jesus have been in there with them? That's Daniel chapter 3, verses 24 to 25. King Nebuchadnezzar came close to the fiery furnace and yelled, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Now he's saying, hey, you servants of the Most High God. He was about to kill them. He tried to kill them because they wouldn't serve his false god, this idol. And now he's saying, oh, yeah, you servants of the Most High God. You know, God's changing his mind about who the real God is by what he's doing through these young men. The 3 men came out of the fire, and everyone there saw that the fire did not hurt them at all. King Nebuchadnezzar then said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has come and saved these 3 men who trusted in him and ignored my command and risked their lives rather than serve and worship any god except their own." King Nebuchadnezzar then made a law that no one could speak anything bad against the God of these three men, because their God was the only true God. Big change. He was just about to kill them because they wouldn't worship his idol. Additionally, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted to very important positions in Babylon. God used these three men to convince the king Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon that our God is the only true God. Now God used these three exiles to show the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar who is the one true God, just like he used Daniel earlier. King Nebuchadnezzar is also now telling his kingdom of Babylon about our great God. But Nebuchadnezzar, knowing that our God is God, and him submitting himself under God's rule are two different things. King Nebuchadnezzar knew about how powerful our God is, but he would not submit to him yet. He had more learning to do. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that made him afraid. He called in all the wise men, magicians, enchanters, and astrologers. He told them his dream and asked them for an interpretation of it, but none of them could do so. He then brought in Daniel, knowing that the Spirit of God was with him, and he would be able to do it. He knew this because Daniel earlier not just interpreted the dream he had, but he also told them what a secret dream was. Now, the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had was follows. King Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of a giant tree in the middle of the earth, whose height reached up into the heavens. It was visible to the whole earth. Then a holy watcher from heaven came down and chopped down the tree, cut off its branches, stripped off its fruit, and put an iron and bronze band around the stump that was still in the ground. The watcher from heaven then said, "Let his portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. This is that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will, and sets it over the lowliest of men." And the watcher said that in Daniel chapter 4, verses 15 to 17. Well, Daniel was dismayed and really frightened about the dream, and he didn't really want to tell King Nebuchadnezzar because he knew what it meant. It was bad news. And him and King Nebuchadnezzar got along. I mean, they both respected each other. But King Nebuchadnezzar asked him kindly to tell him what the dream meant and the truth about it. And he said, "Don't hold anything back. I won't punish you for it, Daniel, if it's bad news. I brought you in here because I want the truth about this dream." Daniel agreed, and he told King Nebuchadnezzar that he, King Nebuchadnezzar, was a tree in his dream, who had grown strong, whose greatness had reached heaven, and whose dominion covered the earth. God has decreed that King Nebuchadnezzar would be driven from among men, and he would live with the beasts of the field. He will eat grass like an ox, and he would be like this for 7 years, until he knew that God ruled the kingdom of men, and he gave it to whom he willed. When he fully knew that God in heaven ruled everything, he would once again return to his position as king. Daniel gave King Nebuchadnezzar advice, telling him to end his sins by practicing righteousness and by showing mercy to the oppressed, and possibly his sentence from God would be reduced. That's Daniel chapter 4, verse 19 to 27. Now, up to this point, through the miracles God did through Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, King Nebuchadnezzar knew that our God was the one true God, and he told the Babylonian kingdom that our God was the one true God. But King Nebuchadnezzar himself did not submit to God. He said, "Oh yeah, he's God, and our kingdom should follow him." He didn't follow him or submit to him. Now it's about to happen, based on what's going to happen to King Nebuchadnezzar because of his pride. 1 year after King Nebuchadnezzar had his dream, it happened as the dream foretold would happen to him. 1 year later, King Nebuchadnezzar was walking on the roof of his royal palace in Babylon, and he said out loud, "Is this not great Babylon, which I have built for my mighty power, as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty?" Daniel chapter 4, verses 30. Well, as the last word was still in his mouth, a voice came to him down from heaven, and it said, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like an ox. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will. And that was in Daniel chapter 4, verses 31 and 32. And this happened immediately. King Nebuchadnezzar was driven from among men, and he was given the mind of a beast. He ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew from heaven. His hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were long like bird's claws. After 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar lifted his eyes up to heaven, and his reason returned to him. He blessed God, he praised and honored him, acknowledging that God is ruler of everything, and that he is just the man that God placed into a certain position as king because God wanted him in that position. When Nebuchadnezzar's reason returned to him, he was restored by the counselors and nobles of the king of Babylon. And from this point on, he ruled Babylon, finally, under humble submission to God. That's in Daniel chapter 4. Now, although Nebuchadnezzar realized that God is God and that he is not, and that he needed to humbly submit himself to God, King Nebuchadnezzar's son did not learn from these experiences of his father. Sometime after this event, Nebuchadnezzar's son Belshazzar was the king of Babylon. One day during a great feast with his nobility, he commanded that the religious items that his father took away from the Jewish temple during the exile to be brought out for the people from the festival to drink from. So he brought out the holy Jewish items from the temple for the people to party with. Immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared out of nowhere. It wrote on the wall of the king's palace, and King Belshazzar became very afraid. He called all the enchanters and wise men to his palace to decipher the meaning of the writing on the wall made by the mysterious hand that appeared out of nowhere, but no one could do so. The queen informed the king that Daniel had previously interpreted messages for his father, King Nebuchadnezzar, because God was with Daniel. Daniel was summoned by the king to do so. Daniel was brought to the king, and he was asked to interpret the mysterious writing on the wall. God gave Daniel the ability to do this. Daniel told King Belshazzar that God gave his father, King Nebuchadnezzar, great power as king, and the world feared and respected him. Yet his father became proud. Therefore his kingship was taken from him, and he was driven from mankind, living like an animal. He then acknowledged that the Most High God ruled the kingdom of mankind and set it over whom he willed. Daniel then said, "As his son, King Belshazzar, you knew all this, yet you have not humbled your heart, but instead you have lifted up yourself against the God of heaven. You took the holy articles from God's house and drank from them at your party, and you worshipped idols. Therefore, God sent the hand that wrote on the air on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin." That's Daniel chapter 5, verses 1 to 23. And Daniel said, what those words mean are, Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and has brought them to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. That's Daniel chapter 5, verses 26 to 28. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. That's Daniel chapter 5, verse 30. So with this event, with King Belshazzar of the Babylonian or Chaldean Empire being killed and Darius taking over, that event caused the whole empire to transition from the Babylonian Empire now into Medo-Persian Empire. Now we're going to hear about Daniel in the lion's den. Now again, a main point of the book of Daniel is how God used Daniel and his three friends to convince two pagan kings to convince two pagan kings and their kingdoms that our God, the God of Israel, is the one true God. So God helped Daniel in many ways because Daniel listened to God and followed what he said to do in his life. Daniel rose to a high position in both the Babylonian and the Medo-Persian governments because of this. He was about to be named ruler over all the other leaders in the entire kingdom by King Darius of Medo-Persia. And this was because an excellent spirit was within him. That's in Daniel chapter 6, 3. This is very similar to what happened with Joseph earlier with the Pharaoh. Joseph was placed second in command because the Pharaoh recognized an excellent spirit was in him or that God was with him. Now, the other leaders of the government became envious of Daniel. They were searching for a way to get him in trouble, to get rid of him, because they did not want Daniel to be the ruler over them. They convinced King Darius to make a law that for 30 days no one should make a petition to any god or man besides King Darius. If they did, they would be thrown into a lion's den. They did this because they knew Daniel prayed to God every day. The king agreed to this. He did not know they were trying to get rid of Daniel, whom the king liked. Well, the king liked him a lot, actually, because this king, Darius of the Medo-Persian Empire, was about to make him ruler over all the other rulers. I guess it sounds like he might have been second in command behind King Darius himself. That's in Daniel chapter 6, verses 1 to 9. Now, when Daniel heard about this new law, he did what he always did. He got down on his knees and prayed to God like he usually did every day. Now, the men who were envious of Daniel were spying on him, knowing that he prays to God every day. When they saw him praying to God, they went to the king and said, "King Darius, did you not make a law that if anyone prayed to any god over this 30-day period, they would be thrown into a lion's den?" The king said, "Yes, I did agree to that law." The envious men said to the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you or your law, because we saw him praying to his God 3 times every day." That's in Daniel chapter 6, verses 10 to 13. The king was very upset about this because he liked Daniel. Like I said, he was about to make him ruler over all the other rulers in the kingdom. King tried to save Daniel from being thrown into the lion's den. However, back then in that culture, when the king made a law, it could not be changed, even by the king himself. So once a law was made by a king, even the king himself couldn't change it. That was their culture. So the king was tricked by these evil men into making this irrevocable law. The king was unable to save Daniel, and he was cast into the lion's den. Now, before he went in, the king said to Daniel, "May your God, who you serve continually, deliver you from the lions." A big stone was placed over the entrance of the lion's den so Daniel could not escape. The king went back to his castle and fasted from food and drink all night, hoping that Daniel's God would save him. That's Daniel chapter 6, verses 14 to 18. Now in the morning, the king went to the lion's den, and he yelled out in sadness, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" That's Daniel chapter 6, verse 20. Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, I've done no harm." It's Daniel chapter 6, verses 21 and 22. Well, the king was very happy that Daniel was not hurt by all the lions. Daniel was taken out of the lion's den completely unharmed because he trusted God. Then the king gathered up all the envious men who tricked the king into making a law that would throw Daniel into the lion's den. The king threw these men into the lion's den in the place of Daniel. The lions jumped up and ate the men before they even reached the ground. As a result of God saving Daniel from the lions, King Darius declared to his whole kingdom that Daniel's God is the one true God, and the whole kingdom must love and follow him. God used Daniel being put in a lion's den to convince the whole kingdom that he is the only true God who saves those who trust in him. That's Daniel chapter 6, verses 19 to 28. Now, on several occasions, God used Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were all lowly exiles from Jerusalem, now in Babylon, to spread the glory of God throughout the pagan, Babylonian, and Medo-Persian empires. When the exiles from Judah first arrived in the mighty pagan Babylonian Empire, the Babylonian Empire had zero regard for the God of Jerusalem. And at that time, why should they? They conquered them and took them as captives, so they figured, that God of the Israelites, he has no power. He couldn't stop us, but this is all part of God's plan. God wanted his people exiled for 2 reasons. One was to discipline them because they kept walking away from God and following evil false gods, despite God's numerous attempts through the prophets to tell them, please come back and follow me, or this exile will happen. Second reason why God allowed at least the first Babylonian exile to happen was to get them out of Jerusalem, where they'd be safe, because the second Babylonian Empire is going to completely destroy the city. So he tucked them, the first group, away here safe, so later on he could bring them back and repopulate the city. So The Babylonians conquered Jerusalem not because our God was weak, but because our God planned it this way. So, again, when the exiles first arrived there, the Nebuchadnezzar and Babylonians had zero regard for our God. But with God just using Daniel and his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, by the end of Daniel's life, God caused two pagan kings, a king of Babylon and the king of the Medes, to follow our God as the one true God. And the kingdoms of Babylon and Media Persia were instructed by these kings that our God is the one and only God and should be followed by them as such. Now, the book of Daniel ends with a bunch of prophecies about things that happen in the future from when Daniel lived through, like, even our future. They still didn't happen yet. They're written in very symbolic language. They're using all these symbols for everything. A ram ran across the whole continent and did battle with a goat, and the horns are broken up, and all kinds of stuff. Now, I don't feel qualified to interpret these prophecies because they're very symbolic. And I believe I know what some of them are, what they mean, but I'd rather not get into them and make a mistake and teach the wrong thing. I'd rather you just read them yourself. Just like everything I teach in the Bible, please go back and read the prophecies and the whole book of Daniel yourself. Because you have to understand, this teaching here, hopefully it's a very great overview of the main points in teaching of the Bible, what I'm doing. But it's not the whole Bible. I'm not teaching everything from the Bible. If I did, it would be a 10-year series if I just read the Bible page by page. I love to do that, but that's not the scope of this teaching. So like every other book, whatever one I go over, please try to read it yourself. Now, next week, we're going to pick up with the minor prophets. We're going to get into a bunch of the minor prophets. And I just want to mention, too, in case a couple of things. First of all, basically, I'm paying out of pocket to air these radio shows and my TV shows. And I just became a 501c3 tax-deductible organization. So basically, if you go to my website, teachingthebible.net, you could, any donations that you give to me to help pay to put these teachings on the air can be tax-deductible for you. Also, I invite you to check out the Facebook Michael Koch business page. And if you go on there, you're going to find a whole bunch of information about basically me and my history of teaching the Bible. And you can see all the different activities and radio stations and TV stations I'm on and things that I've done and things I have coming up. So hopefully you'll be able to stop at those two places and pay me a visit. Teaching the Bible is a listener, viewer, supporter program. Bye-bye.
Naghahatid ng napapanahong impormasyon at inspirasyon para sa buong Calabarzon. Tagasulong ng mga proyektong pangkaunlaran para sa katagumpayan ng bawat mamamayan. Himpilang naglilingkod sa Diyos at sa bayan. DZJV 1458